Chapter 616, Silver Lining.
What do I need?
Catalea silently chuckled, having sensed that the hanged man was probing her with a very ordinary question.
Any needs meant clues. Ignoring the fact that I have already obtained the potion formula for Sequence 4, Mysticologist of the Mystery Prior Pathway, and accumulating points for one of the main ingredients, even without anything, I have no lack of corresponding resource channels, and far more than one.
Catalea had another thought as she recalled the sea god's scepter which Mr. Fool wielded. She then smiled and said,
I need a mystical item at the demigod level, the kind with acceptable side effects.
At that instant, Alger nearly retorted, asking her not to crack a joke. Even in the Church of Storms, one wasn't necessarily capable of obtaining a similar item for years, much less a Beyonder who was obviously only a mid-sequence Beyonder.
If I had an item at the demigod level without any real negative side effects, why wouldn't I keep it for my own use?
Alger knew that the hermit was using mockery to respond to his attempt at sounding her out, but he wasn't as irascible as his peers. He slowly took a deep breath and said,
I'll keep an eye out. But ma'am, you should know very well that just an effective clue towards such an item might be enough to cover the cost of an ocean songster's potion formula.
Very staid, not easily angered. This is very different from the usual style of the Church of Storms. Was the conclusion of my first observation wrong? He's only disguising himself as a priest of the storm? No, I can't think of it that way. This might also be because he doesn't dare to flare up under Mr. Fool's watch. Or perhaps he's just an odd one out in a Church of Storms. There might not be many, but it's not extremely rare.
Catalea wasn't greedy. She didn't sound him out a second time as she nodded.
I know.
As the conversation between the two came to an end, no one made any requests during the transaction segment. A number of members already had the means to obtain whatever they needed, so there was no need to make any requests for purchases. It was mainly Audrey and Fours who were waiting for the subsequent potion formulas. Another reason stemmed from their financial situation or circumstances, and they weren't able to make any early expenditures. This included Emlyn, who was filled with desire for the Sanguine's Viscount inheritance, as well as Miss Magician, who wanted a mystical item.
Indeed, as everyone slowly cast off their statuses as low-sequence Beyonders, advancements are no longer that fast. The rate of transactions will also rapidly drop. In the past, there was basically 1 or 2 deals every week, but now it might be 2 to 3 weeks. In the future, it might even be 3 to 4 months.
Without knowing whether it was for the better or worse, Klein nodded gently to indicate that it was time to engage in the free exchange. Audrey looked at Derek and waited for him to describe the unexpected situation at the City of Silver. Derek didn't let her expectations down. Before anyone could speak, he earnestly said,
Elder Lovia has been released. I encountered her at the library.
Shepherd Lovia has been released? Using flesh and blood, the entire team that she led was corrupted by the true creator, so how can she be without any problems? What is the 6-member council thinking?
Klein originally wanted to say something along the lines of, if there's nothing wrong with Lovia, he will chop off his head and gift it to the true creator to be kicked like a ball. However, considering how swears and curses involve deities in them and might lead to terrible consequences, he rationally changed his thoughts.
Of course, I don't have to be that careful with me above the gray fog.
He sighed inwardly.
Elder Lovia has been released? That shepherd?
Audrey quickly recalled what the name meant. Back then, Little Sun had used Blasphemer Amun's possession and Mr. Fool's help to expose the fact that the entire exploration team had been corrupted by the true creator. As for the team, it was led by Lovia. Her job as a shepherd happened to correspond to the secret suppliant pathway of the true creator.
Yes.
Derek nodded earnestly as he looked towards the hanged man. Alger thought for a moment before asking,
Has your chief returned to the City of Silver?
Why would Mr. Hanged Man suddenly ask about this? Ah, right. To release such an important figure. It's impossible that the other elders of the six-member council wouldn't wait for the chief's return. If the chief has yet to return, and that they had decided this without his consent, it goes to show that the situation is even more terrible than one can imagine. It was so terrible that they couldn't even await his return. If the chief has already returned, then the reason for releasing Lovia has a high chance to do with the outcome of the exploration. This is because, according to Little Sun, this is the only exploration in recent times for the City of Silver. Sai, why didn't I think of this? Audrey, you're still lacking in experience.
Audrey reflected and consoled herself in thought.
Yes, not long ago.
Derek was surprised by Mr. Hanged Man's accurate guesses. At this moment, Fours, who had been listening quietly, combined what she knew from before and suddenly had an idea.
Mr. Sun, could this be the situation? Your chief led the exploration team and that little boy, Jack, to seek out a path that leads to the outside world. But they realized that the power of the true creator is required. Heh, this isn't a lie I'm fabricating, but an inference of the facts. The father of that boy, Jack, belonged to the Aurora Order, and they were seeking the holy residence of the true creator before arriving where you are. Therefore, for the entire City of Silver, your chief decided to release Shepherd Lovia after returning.
If that's really the case, Mr. Sun would be in grave danger.
Audrey said with worry. Fours' words sank Derek's heart. At this moment, Alger shook his head.
No, I have the exact opposite belief. Miss Magician's inference is identical to my theory, but I believe this will make it safer for the Sun.
Why?
Derek's heart calmed down as he asked.
Isn't that simple? Balance.
Klein scoffed inwardly.
The danger of the true creator is noticeable by any sentient creature with eyes and a brain. Your chief will definitely not put all his chips on him. He definitely needs a force that can counterbalance the true creator. As for you, the one who exposed their ploy, you were possessed by blasphemer Amon, so you might represent another possibility. The more Lovia and company wish harm upon you, the more the chief and the other elders will protect you. This way, they would turn a blind eye to whatever suspicious aspects you didn't manage to erase.
Alger explained simply.
This ends up being a silver lining?
Fours was stunned.
Mr. Hanged Man makes a lot of sense. When it comes to analyzing matters in the situation, I'm still far from matching him.
Audrey felt somewhat depressed. She even thought of puffing her cheeks, but she immediately realized that it wasn't an elegant act. All she could do was keep those thoughts to herself. For the rest of the members, Emlyn, who didn't know much about Lovia, had a hard time keeping up. However, he knew about Jack and the repeated cycles, so he was barely able to understand the discussion.
In order to break out of the City of Silver's conundrum, they released a danger that has the true creator involved?
Emlyn inwardly made a guess. Compared to him, Catalea couldn't understand a word. She felt as though she was from a completely different world compared to the other members.
I actually have a feeling of admiration despite my incomprehension of what they said. The last time I had this feeling was several years ago. Back then, I was still very weak. There were some inklings in the previous tarot gatherings, especially so when it involves the City of Silver, but never has it been as serious as this time. Also, why are they discussing the true creator and blasphemer Amon so naturally? It should be the blasphemer Amon I know of. They're only mid-sequence beyonders. What have they actually done in the past?
Catlea's confidence as a powerhouse suffered a setback at that very moment. After hearing Mr. Hanged Man's analysis, Derek first heaved a sigh of relief before asking with tense nerves.
Could this result in our City of Silver being destroyed by the fallen creator?
He originally wished that Mr. Hanged Man could provide him with an answer that could relieve him, but he ended up hearing the man say in a deep voice,
That possibility can't be ruled out.
Then what should I do?
Derek earnestly sought advice.
Under the situation of us not understanding what your chief and the other elders of the six-member council are up to, I cannot provide you with any suggestions, but I don't think you need to be in such a panic.
Alger raised his head to glance at Mr. Fool, who was silently looking at the members from the end of the long bronze table. Tracing his gaze, Derek subconsciously looked over and saw Mr. Fool, whose extremely blurry figure was covered in the gray fog. He instantly felt a sense of serenity, and he couldn't help but recall that holy and powerful angel.
Although I have foiled several of the true creator's ploys, I will definitely not last a second if I were to really clash with him. The situation will devolve into the fool coming to his doorstep, but the true creator finding the fool completely lacking.
Klein maintained his casual listening state, without saying a word or showing any expression. Derek retracted his gaze and said to Alger,
Mr. Hanged Man, thank you for your help. I will try to figure out what Chief and the others are planning.
With the matter coming to an end, Cuttlefish deliberated before saying,
Was the blasphemer Amun you were talking about before referring to the ancestor of the Amun family in the Fourth Epic's Tudor Empire, the son of the creator?
Son of the creator?
Audrey was stunned by what Ma'am Hermit said. She instinctively turned her head to the end of the long bronze table and discovered Mr. Fool sitting there calmly, as though he was tacitly confirming Amun's other identity. Chapter 617, The Mysterious Adam. Don't tell me that this matter was targeted at me? Alger was stunned by the hermit's description, as he couldn't help but twitch his brows. However, he didn't directly inquire further because this could very likely expose certain matters. Besides, he was very confident that there would be other members asking. Fours asked with piqued interest,
The son of the creator?
She never expected that Amun had such a shocking identity, aside from the titles like Blasphemer and King of Angels. She was filled with curiosity over this. Cuttlefish swept her a look and said without a change in tone,
Legend has it that back when the original creator split into the various deities and races, his body produced two babies. One of them was blasphemer Amun.
The mural inside Amun's mausoleum was somewhat different from your description. Back when Amun and Adam was born, the creator had just awoken and withdrew the authorities of the ancient gods. He was seated high on a holy mountain and was surrounded by angels as they praised him. There were no signs of him dying or splitting. That mural does have something in common with the City of Silver's historical records. Perhaps the creator had really awoken twice. And perhaps the original creator and Amun's father, the creator as recorded by the City of Silver, aren't the same person. Both of them have an inheritance relationship. As Klein listened to Ma'am Hermit's description, he began theorizing, Amun is actually the son of the creator. Such a status is in no way inferior to the true gods. As for Mr. Fool, their tarot club was able to easily purify his avatar and stop his possession. Audrey recalled the past matters and suddenly felt that she had unknowingly exceeded many ordinary beyonders. The circles and levels of knowledge exposure that the two groups had differed by more than 100 times. She asked with piqued interest,
Ma'am Hermit, do you know the other son of the creator?
Adam.
Cuttlefish answered succinctly. Audrey was clearly taken aback. This was because her question only required a yes or no. After receiving the confirmation that she knew, she would ask for the details and make it clear that she was willing to pay for it. Who knew that Ma'am Hermit had directly given her the name, Adam Milha? She doesn't seem to care too much about such information. She's in control of a lot of information. Audrey managed to infer certain matters through this detail as her eyes darted about. She'd never heard of an important figure named Adam.
I haven't either. Apart from being recorded as the son of the creator, it's like he has never appeared before. There are nearly no traces of him in the history of the Fourth Epoch.
Cuttlefish answered frankly. This Adam is very mysterious. He was already rather well versed in the Fourth Epoch's three empires of Solomon, Tudor, and Trunsoest, as well as the angel families that come under them. Yet, he had never heard of him before. If it wasn't for Rhodes who live-streamed the Church of Steam and Machinery's exploration of Amun's mausoleum, he wouldn't have even known his name. Has he long perished, or is he hidden in the dark while scheming something? Klein sighed inwardly. Audrey subconsciously glanced at Mr. Hanged Man and discovered him shaking his head as well. Amun is a king of angels, so it doesn't make sense for Adam to not be one. There should be records in the City of Silver. Audrey looked at Derek. For some reason, Derek easily understood what was on Miss Justice's mind. He said in slight embarrassment,
We do not know about Adam, just like how we don't know about Amun. I was previously searching for ancient tomes related to the King of Angels. I believe that I was lacking in clearance as my sequence was still low at that time. I will continue searching for information on this.
King of Angels. Cattleya moved her fingers indiscernibly as she memorized the phrase. She knew that Miss Justice would definitely answer if she asked, so without waiting, she directly asked,
Amun is a king of angels that all of you are referring to?
Yes.
To thank Ma'am Hermit for her generosity, Audrey explained in detail.
In the records of the City of Silver, the Creator had many angels attending to him. Among them, the leaders of the angels who were closest to the throne of God were deemed King of Angels. We haven't managed to confirm many King of Angels. One of them is the Angel of Fate Ouroboros, who originates from the ancient tomes of the City of Silver. His title is Tail Devourer. The second is Medici, who Mr. Fool happened to mention. We are still unsure of his title. The third is a guess. We suspect that Amun is the Angel of Time among the King of Angels. Since he is a King of Angels, Adam, who is also a son of the Creator, is very likely one as well.
Haven't managed to confirm many. I don't even know the term King of Angels, but you have already grasped half of them. That's not many. None of your sequences are higher than mine.
Cattleya nearly became speechless. Only at this point did Emlyn really understand the meaning behind a King of Angels. He decided to use these names to seek out traces of the King of Angels via the secret historical records the Sanguine had in their control after he returned to the real world. Cattleya fell silent for 2 seconds before saying,
Mr. Sun, you were once possessed by Amun?
Yes, it was his avatar.
Derek answered honestly.
However, he was purified by Mr. Fool. I wasn't injured at all.
Purified by Mr. Fool. Cattleya couldn't hold back the urge to look at the end of the long bronze table. She originally imagined that she had a general idea of Mr. Fool's state, believing that he was still in a state of reawakening and was unable to use much of his powers. This was why he sought the identity of Sea God and obtained that scepter. However, the present situation shook the foundations of her speculation. She felt that Mr. Fool was like an iceberg. What was hidden beneath the surface was even more terrifying and unfathomable. He easily thwarted Amun's plans. Under certain situations, he can briefly break through the restrictions and produce strength at the level of a god. Cattleya's heart sank as she didn't ask further. She cautiously shut her mouth. At this moment, Audrey had thought of something that puzzled her because of this topic. She proactively asked,
Ma'am Hermit, after Amun's avatar was purified by Mr. Fool, a worm with 12 transparent rings was left behind. It's said to be a worm of time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cattleya recalled for 2 seconds before saying, Audrey pressed out of curiosity.
Which pathway does it belong to? Which Beyonder pathway does the Blasphemer pathway belong to?
Cattleya answered directly without any thought.
The Marauder pathway. Legend has it that at the saint or angel level, they are able to fool fate and cheat the rules, becoming a parasite of time.
Audrey marveled inwardly before asking,
Then, what can a worm of time be used for?
Nice question.
Klein secretly cheered for Miss Justice. He pumped himself up as he waited for Ma'am Hermit to give the answer. He happened to have a worm of time in his junk pile.
All that matters is that it's useful. As for how it's used, I have other people to consult.
Klein controlled the world with great satisfaction and looked at Emlyn.
Mr. Moon, I have something I would like to communicate with you in private.
Emlyn nodded, feeling somewhat uncertain.
Okay.
The world immediately requested for Mr. Fool's permission and successfully obtained the privilege of isolating everyone. Then he looked at Emlyn White and said,
I wish for you to present to me every action which Leonard Mitchell made in your memories.
Why?
Emlyn asked in puzzlement.
It involves certain secrets.
Klein controlled the world to answer succinctly.
His true goal wasn't to buy that mystical item, but to observe Leonard Mitchell? That fellow has deep secrets, the world as well. For an investigation, he was willing to spend £7,500. However, that mystical item is indeed powerful. Isn't the world constantly seeking a way to eliminate the mental corruption in a Beyonder characteristic? This is likely useful.
Emlyn suppressed his wandering thoughts as he seriously recalled Leonard Mitchell from his point of view. With Mr. Fool's help, he conjured a video in the form of streaming light. When the streaming light landed in the world's hands, Klein quickly browsed through it. He confirmed that Leonard really knew the existence of the grandpa, but he was unable to determine if he understood the danger. Temporarily suppressing any corresponding thoughts, Klein removed the isolation barriers and allowed the Tarot Club members to continue. At this moment, Audrey was reminded of something by Mr. World's private communication. She hurriedly looked at Fours and asked in concern,
Miss Magician, did you discover any abnormalities at William Street?
That will require Mr. World to answer you.
Fours said, having been put into a difficult position. Without waiting for Miss Justice to speak again, Klein controlled the world and hoarsely replied,
There were abnormalities. But I have already informed the Church of Evernight and the Church of Steam. If there are any future problems, I might require your help.
All right.
Audrey heaved a sigh of relief. Informed the Church of Evernight and Steam. This. Catalea found the description ludicrous. From what she knew, a secret organization like the Tarot Club was a natural enemy of the official Beyonders. There was no room for any compromises between the two, but the way the world had dealt with it and the words he used had made it seem like the Tarot Club was an organization that cooperated with the official Beyonders. Colored by these feelings, she listened to the rest of the conversation before bowing and bidding farewell when Mr. Fool made the closing remark. Soon, Klein was the only one left above the gray fog. Chapter 618, Volunteer Work, second floor of the Sweet Lemon Bar, in the boss's room. Bilt Brando held a cigar as he stood by the window. He was looking out, and his eyes were out of focus as he wore a dark and terrifying expression. We suck expression. At this moment, a bodyguard entered, bent his back slightly, and carefully said,
Sir, Sothoth has returned from the east.
Let him in.
Bilt tried hard to correct his expression. Sothoth was his assistant, an important member of the Adventurer Association. In less than a minute, Sothoth, who was dressed in a linen shirt, brown jacket, and red headscarf, walked in. He looked to be in his 30s and had bronze skin. He had recessed eye sockets and a black mustache below and under his lips. He was obviously someone who spent most of his time at sea. Sothoth bowed rather informally and sized up Bilt Brando.
Boss, something happened? Yes, something happened. From the looks of it, it will fail.
Bilt didn't keep the matter from him as he sighed.
I have no idea how I'm going to answer that important figure.
Without waiting for Sothoth to answer, he asked,
Have there been any changes at the Eastern Front?
Still the same as usual. The pirates are still after every ship they can plunder. They even target each other. The Navy is only able to guard the various colonial posts, and they're barely able to maintain smooth passage through the sea routes while protecting the relatively important ships. There are often sea battles, with both sides obtaining victories at times.
Sothoth said as he shrugged his shoulders.
The Eastern Front of the Sonia Sea is a pirate's playground.
Bilt sighed in agreement. Sothoth thought for a moment and added,
There has been some recent news from the islands on the Eastern Front. Apparently it first originated from the Black Death.
Vice Admiral Ailment? What news is it?
Bilt asked. His interest piqued, Sothoth said with a solemn and excited tone.
Vice Admiral Ailment really encountered an assassination attempt and was seriously injured, and the person who attacked her was the adventurer Gehrman Sparrow.
Gehrman Sparrow?
Bilt blurted out.
Yes, it's him. He really is a powerhouse at the level of a pirate admiral. Even if it was a sneak attack, it happened on the Black Death. There were so many infamous pirates around. but he managed to successfully escape after dealing a heavy blow to Vice Admiral Ailment. He later hunted Wormtongue Mythor.
Sothoth answered with affirmation while sighing. Bilt staggered before sighing.
That's important news. There are very few powerhouses at the pirate admiral level among adventurers. To be able to deal a heavy blow to a pirate admiral on her flagship while alone, such an operation can only be done if one is absolutely confident in themselves or crazy enough. Only a madman will infiltrate a pirate admiral's flagship in an attempt to assassinate her, instead of finding another spot.
Having said that, his expression changed slightly.
I met an adventurer named Gehrman Sparrow last night.
For real?
Sothoth's pupils shrank as he asked solemnly.
I can't be sure since I've never met the real Gehrman Sparrow or seen his photograph or portrait.
Bilt shook his head. Sothoth thought for a moment and said,
You can search for the newspapers from the Rorstedt archipelago to confirm his identity. So many days have passed. There should be tourists that would have brought over the corresponding news report and Sonia Morning Post. Yes, the government offices, police stations, churches, and charity organizations will subscribe to the important newspapers of the Rorstedt archipelago.
The Rorstedt archipelago was the biggest colonial grounds of the Lowen Kingdom in the central Sonia Sea. Its influence radiated outward, so there was no doubt that Oravi Island, which was within a distance of 3 days of travel, was part of its domain of influence. The official organizations and churches all subscribed to the newspapers and magazines of the area, so any non-crucial news would be received in 3 to 4 days.
All right.
Bilt nodded as he probed deeper.
Do you have the exact details of Gehrman Sparrow's assassination attempt on Vice Admiral Ailment?
So thought for a moment and said,
It's said that Gehrman Sparrow is able to change into anyone, just like Vice Admiral Hurricane Kolangos. It's with that power that he successfully infiltrated the Black Death and found an opportunity to carry out the assassination.
He can change into anyone.
Bilt's eyes lit up.
No, that won't do. That's a crazy guy who dares to infiltrate the Black Death to assassinate Vice Admiral Ailment. He causes one to instinctively fear him and distance themselves from him.
The light in Bilt's eyes dimmed.
Furthermore, I don't even know if he's the real one or not.
He subconsciously shook his head.
I wonder when the Nighthawks and Machinery hive mind will take action and deal with the abnormality at William Street. I hope they do it as soon as possible.
Amidst his thoughts, Klein left the gray fog and returned to the real world. After some consideration, he took out a piece of paper and laid it out on a brown desk. He wrote with a dark red fountain pen, asking about Mr. Azek's recent situation before mentioning how he had discovered that someone had a parasite in him while he was searching for a mystical item that could steal the beyonder powers of others. Following that, he seemingly asked in passing if there was a way to avoid the parasite and inform the host. With this as a topic starter, he added how he learned from others about information regarding the Worm of Time that was related to high-sequence beyonders from the Marauder pathway. He also mentioned that he knew that such an item could be used as a sacrificial item in important rituals or as a material in high-level charms. However, he had no idea how to produce them. Phew. Klein put down the fountain pen, folded the letter, and brought the copper whistle to his lips. He blew at it forcefully. White bones spewed out like a fountain, forming a gigantic skeleton messenger. But this time, the messenger didn't bore out from downstairs, and it instead tore through the ceiling like many times before, looking down at the summoner from above. Klein knew that this wasn't because the messenger had become impolite again, but because he was staying on the first floor of an inn. He flicked his wrist and threw the letter like a dart, making it land accurately in the messenger's huge, bony hand. The flames in the messenger's eye sockets flickered as though it was observing Klein, but ultimately nothing happened. Its body disintegrated into a waterfall made of bones as they drilled into the ground. After everything was done, Klein didn't spread open the paper crane. He erased what had been written and wrote the same content to seek advice from the Snake of Mercury, Will Auceptin. This was because he realized something terrible. The paper crane wasn't a mystical item or beyonder weapon. It was an ordinary piece of paper that had been folded. After repeatedly having its content erased by an eraser, it was beginning to show signs of its structural integrity failing. In a few more tries, it might directly tear.
I'll leave extremely important matters that require contact before considering it. For example, only when Mr. Isaac isn't sure how to bypass the grandpa to warn Leonard.
Klein shook his head silently and rapidly packed up the items on his desk. In addition, he didn't dare to use the radio transceiver to contact Rhodes recently. This was because the powerhouse sent by the true creator was likely still loitering around the area in search for the all-black eyes aura. The scent of the gray fog was also equally able to attract the true creator's attention, allowing him to inform his believers.
Today, I'll continue being a tourist and relax. Tomorrow, I'll begin searching for an opportunity to do real acting.
Klein retracted his thoughts, draped on his coat, and took his top hat before walking out the inn. He planned on heading to the mountains outside Orvie Harbor to watch the sunset. This thought stemmed from a popular novel. Its author's name was Leanne Mastying. This gentleman was born in Odora and had decided to permanently reside in Backland after the age of 20. His books had introduced the sunset at Mount St. Draco with immense feelings, believing that it was the most beautiful scene he had ever seen. Klein rode a carriage out the city and walked to the foot of Mount St. Draco. He took 1 hour before arriving at the peak of the not-so-tall mountain. Time passed as the sun slowly set, making the blue sea situated to the left of the mountain peak appear like a sea of fire. As for the emerald green forests and the vast fields on the right, they seemed to be gilded. All the colors bloomed with the final touches of radiance in that instant before darkness gradually approached until it became dark. Ships entered the harbor as carriages drove into the city. The busy people began returning home on the roads parallel to the wheat fields and fruit gardens. When darkness enveloped the entire land, specks of warm light lit up one after another inside and outside the city. They were like resplendent gems that dotted the velvet night sky.
It's really beautiful.
Klein admired for a moment until all the lights from each family were reflected in his eyes. He turned around in silence and walked down the mountain path. Accompanied by the dark trees, he returned to the foot of the mountain before walking for some distance until he hired a carriage along the periphery of the port city. The carriage stably proceeded forward as the dim yellow halos from the iron-black elegant street lamps silently illuminated the ground, receding backwards into the distance. After some time, Klein returned to his inn. He took out his key and opened his door. There was a bed, a desk, and a chair in the room, silently sitting there in the rich darkness. They silently reflected some of the crimson luster. Klein closed the door very gently and walked to the window. He stood in the shadows created by the curtains and remained motionless for quite some time. The lights outside were still bright. Early the next morning, Klein turned on the tap and patted his face with ice-cold water, rejuvenating his entire body. He had already thought of a way to engage in true acting.
It was still the hospital where death could occur at any moment.
In the past, Klein had only circled the area without much focus. Loitering around had made it hard for him to find any suitable targets. This time, he planned on using some time of volunteer work to stay in the hospital for prolonged periods of time. He could provide hospice to the dying patients who temporarily didn't have their family beside them. By doing so, he could await the targets he needed. After having breakfast, Klein arrived at 10 Black Forest Street and entered the Orvie Hospice Foundation. This was a charity organization of the Church of the Evernight Goddess. One of its responsibilities was to provide the various hospitals with trained volunteers. Klein came to the registration booth and saw the female employee reading the papers. Hence, he lightly tapped the table to attract her attention.
Is there something I can help you with?
The lady lowered the papers and asked,
I wish to do some volunteer work.
Klein said succinctly.
Name?
The lady looked up at him. Suddenly, her eyes froze as her right hand trembled. The fountain pen she had just picked up fell to the ground. In the papers in front of her was a portrait that looked almost realistic. The portrait's owner was that of the crazy and dangerous adventurer Gehrman Sparrow. Chapter 619, Unable to Speak, Oravi Hospice Foundation. The lady responsible for volunteer registration hurriedly bent her back as she frantically searched for the fountain pen, which had dropped. At this moment, Klein also noticed that she was reading a news report paper from a few days ago. It was back when his portrait and escapades were published. Mija. Klein stood in front of the desk as he thought helplessly.
This area subscribes to newspapers from the Rorset Archipelago as well. From the time it takes to sail between the places, it's true that they can only read news from 3 to 4 days ago. If I had known earlier, I would have worn a new face and thought of a fake name before coming.
The lady in her 30s finally picked up the fountain pen, raised her head, and said with a trembling voice,
You want to do volunteer work?
Yes.
Klein gave an affirmative answer.
But you're an adventurer.
The mortified lady stammered for an excuse. She instinctively didn't want such an extremely dangerous person to do volunteer work.
Being famous isn't necessarily a good thing. Forget it. I'll switch my appearance and name before coming again.
Klein had the intention of giving up as he questioned her without any emotion.
Who made the rules that adventurers can't do volunteer work?
The lady responsible for the registration was on the brink of tears as she blurted out,
It wasn't me.
The volunteer registration room became abnormally quiet. Klein was first taken aback before he felt like laughing. It took him a great deal of effort to maintain Gehrman Sparrow's image. After the lady calmed down, she sensed that her answer was clearly problematic. She forced a smile and said,
No, this isn't regulated by anyone. My impression of adventurers is that they are very busy. They need to be out at sea and have very little time to do volunteer work.
That's them.
Klein answered succinctly. The lady held her palm to her mouth as she revealed a smile.
All right, I'll immediately help you with your registration.
As she spoke, she pulled out a form and handed it over.
Please fill it in. We will provide the corresponding training and volunteer jobs according to your requests. We will contact you, or you can always come over to inquire for any updates.
She had already made up her mind not to put Gehrman Sparrow's form into the docket. Instead, she would hand it directly to the Foundation's person in charge and the police.
Goddess, why is this dangerous fellow here to do volunteer work?
She secretly drew a crimson moon on her chest. Klein nodded in silence. He took the form and sat down. Picking up a fountain pen, he began filling in his basic information. During this process, a man in a doctor's gown entered and asked,
Joanna, are there any new volunteers? We'll begin the morning training.
Joanna, who was in charge of the registration, had the intention to shake her head. However, Gehrman Sparrow, who sat opposite her, gave her an intense sense of pressure, even though he remained silent and didn't raise his head. She didn't dare to lie.
There is.
She first replied to the man and then looked at Klein.
Mr. Sparrow, do you wish to receive the basic training for volunteer work now, or do you wish to wait until tomorrow?
Klein thought for a moment before saying,
Now.
He planned on familiarizing himself first, allowing him to show his professionalism at volunteer work after changing his identity. That way, he could quickly help out at a hospital. Joanna clearly drew a breath and said,
Then follow Mr. Gravia after you are done filling in the form.
All right.
Klein replied calmly. Half an hour later, the calm and polite adventurer who had his madness hidden in him stared at the abnormally dirty toilet in front of him. He held his breath and said,
Scrub it?
Right. You have already received the basic training on how to carry a patient. However, that isn't the most common task we do at a hospital. We're mainly in charge of cleaning a patient's vomit or changing and washing the linen, as well as maintaining the cleanliness of the washroom. Matters such as bandaging wounds are left to the professionals. We only need you to have the basics grasped.
Gravia pinched his nose as he pointed to the stained toilets.
A volunteer has already demonstrated it to you. Please begin.
This is very different from what I imagined. Completely different.
Klein's first reaction was to turn his back and leave, but he ultimately picked up the cleaning tools with a deadpan expression. He held back his disgust and went over before crouching down. Then he leaned back a little as he extended his right arm. At noon, Klein took off his white gown and wore his top hat before leaving Oravi Hospice Foundation with a cold expression. He had serious second thoughts about continuing the volunteer work to find opportunities for real acting. Only when his carriage arrived at the Sweet Lemon Bar did he steel his resolve to continue the attempt. Klein emphasized his goal once again.
I have to become a marionettist in 1350 and digest the potion, so as to begin seeking the clues to become a high-sequence beyonder.
He retracted his emotions and entered the Sweet Lemon Bar. He spent 8 pence for apple cider marinated pork ribs and a piece of buttered bread. Together with a cup of rye beer costing 1.5 pence, they formed Klein's lunch. He finished eating in an unhurried fashion before using a handkerchief to wipe his mouth. He said to the bartender,
"Where's your boss? I have something to talk to him about."
Since he had already verbally agreed to join the Adventure Association, Klein naturally didn't plan on missing the opportunity to use this loose alliance. He planned to ask Bilt Brando to contact unaffiliated artisans or artisans who were willing to moonlight. He wanted an artisan to create an item like Azek's copper whistle, so he didn't need to set up a ritual and chant the incantations every time he summoned his messenger. It was complicated, troublesome, and a waste of time. Of course, if Bilt Brando didn't know an artisan, Klein didn't plan on forcing the matter. After all, joining the Adventurer Association didn't require him to pay. Bam! The bartender pointed to the staircase and said,
"He's on the second floor. If you've already agreed to join his association and have seen those bodyguards, then they'll let you up."
Klein nodded indiscernibly and slowly got up before walking towards the staircase. Indeed, no guards stopped him. Only when he reached the second floor did a bodyguard approach him to inquire about his purpose. Apekre. Thanks to his reputation as Gehrman Sparrow, he easily met Bilt Brando again. He also saw an unfamiliar man beside him.
"My friend Sothoth Yan, an important member of the association."
Bilt pointed to the man in a red headscarf. At the same time, he exchanged looks with the man and saw the seriousness and puzzlement in each other's eyes. After a simple greeting, Klein got a chair to sit on. He directly said,
"I wish to obtain the help of an artisan. I wonder if the association is able to provide any clues."
"Artisan?"
Bilt sucked at his cigar and paused for a few seconds. He deliberated for a moment before saying,
"I do know an artisan, but he's unwilling to meet strangers. This will bring him grave danger. If you have any requests, then I can be the middleman. I believe I have the required reputation to do so."
To most churches, mid- and low-sequence beyonders without any evil intentions could be ignored at times. However, artisans needed to be dealt with indiscriminately. Otherwise, the mystical items they created could flood the markets, bringing about extreme unrest to human society.
From the looks of it, the Adventurer Association which Bilt organized isn't just wasting money. At the very least, it has amassed quite a lot of resources and information channels.
Klein took out the Murloc bladder which he had long prepared.
"I wish to make this into a ring, mainly to provide one with underwater mobility."
He temporarily didn't mention the messenger, planning to test the artisan's ability and Bilt's reputation. If the messenger summoning incantation became widely known, it would create quite a bit of trouble. Good. As Klein's thoughts reeled, he couldn't help but size up Bilt.
A Sequence 9 Beyonder characteristic isn't expensive. Even if Bilt succumbs to greed and usurps the created mystical item, it doesn't matter. After all, I have a bunch of charms from the Sea God domain. Furthermore, it's not like I can't find him to settle the debt. This is better. For him to be able to organize an adventurer association, he definitely has plenty of money and ingredients.
In that instant, Bilt shuddered for some baffling reason. All the hair on his back stood up. He felt as though Gairman Sparrow's eyes looked like he had seen a treasure trove. As treasure, this wasn't a good experience at all. Bilt glanced at Sothoth and forced a smile.
This is a Murloc splatter, right? Making a material at this level into a mystical item basically wouldn't have any accidents. The artisan's fee is 150 pounds. You can pay me after it's crafted.
Klein nodded silently as he threw the Murloc bladder over.
A very fair price.
After Bilt caught it, he added,
Help me ask the artisan if he has the ability to fix the summoning ritual of a spirit world creature onto an item which can be used for at least a year.
No problem.
Bilt heaved a sigh of relief before signaling to Sothoth with his eyes. Sothoth rubbed his depressed eye socket and took a step forward.
Mr. Gairman, would you be interested in heading out to sea soon? We already have a few pretty good ships. They're planning on hiring manpower to the Eastern Front to hunt pirates.
Klein calmly shook his head.
Interesting. But my focus right now is to digest my potion.
Sothoth's smile froze before vanishing. He didn't say anything further, as it was a rejection from an adventurer at the pirate admiral level. He and Bilt had already found the relevant newspapers and confirmed the authenticity of Gairman Sparrow. Klein slowly stood up and pressed his top hat to his chest before bowing slightly.
Thank you for your help.
Bilt's facial muscles twitched a little, as though he was holding back something. He had something to say, but he wasn't able to say it out loud. Finally, he slowly drew in a breath and smiled.
I believe we should hope for a pleasant partnership.
Klein sensed Bilt's and Sothoth's abnormality, but he suppressed his puzzlement and didn't ask. Klein turned around and walked to the door before turning the doorknob, thinking,
I can't ask. There will be trouble once I ask. I have to focus on digesting the potion.
Mr. Gairman,
Bilt suddenly said. The corner of Klein's mouth twitched as he calmly looked back.
Nothing? Haha, I mean, as a member of the association, you can have cheaper drinks over here.
Bilt said with a forced smile. Klein gently nodded and opened the door to leave, thinking.
Do you think I would have pressed on the matter? Tisk.
After watching his back vanish, Bilt stared in a daze for 2 seconds before letting out a long sigh. Chapter 620. Stand in Mission. Inside the room, Sothoth pressed down on the edges of his eyes when he heard Bilt's sigh. He said in a deep voice,
Boss, that important figure will arrive the day after tomorrow.
Bilt's expression turned serious as he looked back.
I know.
We only have 2 choices. First, we ignore whether Gairman Sparrow is worth trusting, and we entrust him with the mission. We can only hope for the best outcome. Second, we immediately abandon our business in Oravi, leaving with our cash and jewelry to become pirates at sea. I have the confidence to make most sailors and adventurers on the pirate hunter follow us.
Sothoth paused before adding,
Boss, back when you were an adventurer, leading our ship and hunting pirates, you were always this decisive and tenacious. I believe you have already made your decision. There's no need for me to do anything else.
Bilt smiled bitterly.
Haha, there's no need to suck up to me. I'm no longer the fearless pirate hunter who didn't fear blood or gunfire from before. Long periods of an easy and comfortable life have dulled my will. I don't even wish to seek out chances to advance. Those companions who had turned into monsters still live on in my mind.
Phew. He exhaled as his expression instantly turned solemn.
However, you're right. We don't have time to hesitate. We have to immediately make a decision.
Having said that, Bilt turned his head and gestured at the window with his chin. Sothoth was taken aback for a moment before understanding what his boss meant. After leaving the Sweet Lemon Bar, Klein strolled by the side of the street, planning to hire a carriage at the crossroads. At this moment, he heard a window open above him and saw a figure jump down. Perhaps after experiencing the terrifying incidents involving the Antigonus family's notebook and Banzi Harbor's strange telegraph office, Klein's first reaction was that Bilt Brando was dead. He had suddenly died after his visit and was thrown down from upstairs, falling to the ground with his eyes wide open. This was just like how he saw Ray Bieber's mother dead in a reclining chair back then. The body was highly decomposed, and the eyeball fell to the floor because of the external disturbance. Similar thoughts flashed through his mind as Klein discerned the figure who had fallen from upstairs to be Sothoth Jan, not Bilt Brando. Furthermore, he looked normal and was clearly still alive.
Oh no, here comes trouble.
Klein's heart skipped a beat, having a more accurate guess. If it were himself, he definitely would have pretended not to see Sothoth Jan jump off the building to intercept him, running before the man could even say a word and until he shook him off his tail. It would be akin to how Admiral of Stars was being pursued by knowledge.
Unfortunately, I'm currently German Sparrow. A crazy adventurer wouldn't flee because of such trivial matters. Sigh, getting to know myself better is an additional perk.
Klein halted and watched as Sothoth firmly landed on the ground. He bowed with his hand placed over his chest.
Mr. German Sparrow, we have a very important task to entrust you.
Here it comes.
Klein calmly replied.
I won't be that free lately.
Sothoth said earnestly.
This wouldn't waste too much of your time. You can first listen to what it is about before considering to reject or accept it.
I'm afraid I have no choice but to accept it after hearing it. Actually, it's still all right. If Bilt Brando and Sothoth Jan threaten me to take the mission, I don't mind changing them into gold pounds and beyonder ingredients.
Klein thought it through seriously and discovered that he didn't need to have too many reservations out at sea. Having the strength of a pirate admiral basically made him unstoppable in most areas. Mamenash. He took out the pocket watch in his inner pocket and opened it.
I'm giving you 5 minutes.
Sothoth pointed at the entrance to the Sweet Lemon bar behind Klein.
All right, that's enough.
Returning to the room, Klein glanced at the wall clock and said coldly,
You still have 3 minutes and 12 seconds.
His attitude gave Bilt a baffling sense of ease. He began to believe that German Sparrow definitely had the capabilities to complete the mission. Bilt hurriedly asked,
Mr. German, I heard that you can transform into anyone, just like how Vice Admiral Hurricane Kalangos was formerly capable of doing so.
Who revealed this matter?
Klein pricked up his brows as his gaze towards Bilt turned gloomy. If news of German Sparrow being able to transform into anyone spread, it was quite troublesome for Klein. This was because this made others either think of creeping hunger, making them think of Kalangos' death, or they would think that he was a beyonder, who had certain secrets and was suspected to be a faceless. The former would attract the attention of the Twilight Hermit Order, while the latter would attract the attention of the Church of the Evernight Goddess, who would send personnel to investigate. Of course, the Church of the Evernight Goddess wasn't a powerful force at sea, so Klein didn't need to worry too much about it. He just didn't wish to be in conflict with the Nighthawks. If that happened, he had no choice but to abandon his identity as German Sparrow. This was at the critical point where more and more people knew of the crazy and powerful adventurer who had a soft heart while he was being acknowledged and gaining feedback. Bilt sensed the change in German Sparrow's gaze as he tensed up. He chuckled and said,
This was news released from the Black Death.
Tracy. She's trying to seek revenge on me by doing so. One day, I'll successfully hunt her.
Klein nodded slightly and said,
You can think of it as real.
He didn't explain how he received his powers of shapeshifting, as this didn't match German Sparrow's persona. Bilt heaved a sigh of relief and said after 2 seconds of silence,
We're helping an important figure to search for a stand-in.
Under German Sparrow's ambiguous gaze, he explained in detail,
That important figure needs to independently deal with a secret matter that he doesn't want others to know of. Therefore, he needs a stand-in to represent him in dealing with his daily affairs. He would meet different guests and socialize with his mistress without revealing a problem. He will take 3 to 5 days to return. We had already found someone who looked like him, spending a great deal of time to correct his posture and accent, and we had informed the good news to the important figure. Who knew that the tramp would overeat and suddenly die last night? That important figure is about to begin his operation. We do not have the time to look for another person who looks like him, so we can only seek your help.
Isn't this the true acting opportunity I've been looking for?
Klein was moved. However, he sharply noticed one point. To be addressed as an important figure by Bilt, leader of the Adventurer Association, it definitely meant that the person was an important figure. Matters that happened around an important figure were often not simple. It contained quite a considerable risk. Klein thought for a moment before asking in a deep tone,
"Do you think that this matter will be dangerous?"
Bilt said with a smile as he spread his hands,
No, as long as you aren't exposed, there shouldn't be any danger. You need to represent the important figure and appear at social conventions. Heh, no one would dare assassinate him. Yes, I know what you're worried about. You're afraid that this important figure would silence everyone who knows about this matter after it's done? Don't worry, the pirates have fabricated plenty of vicious rumors about him, so even if this matter succeeds, no one will believe it even if you divulge this in the future. It will only be treated as a joke.
Klein no longer bothered with the topic and switched to asking,
"What kind of payment are you offering?"
Bilt made an offer which he believed Garamond Sparrow wasn't unable to resist based on what had been previously entrusted to him.
£1,000 and 3 chances to get the artisan to make something for you. Heh, I'll pay for all expenses apart from the materials.
It's not bad. Besides, it gives me a chance to do true acting.
Klein took a look at the wall clock and said,
"I'll return and consider. I'll give you the answer in the evening."
Regardless, he had to head above the gray fog to divine the level of danger. Considering how Bilt and Sothoth were Sequence 7 or even Sequence 6 Beyonders, Klein didn't directly request to head to the washroom in front of them to prevent them from sensing a problem. As the important figure's identity hadn't been revealed, Bilt wasn't too worried. He nodded.
All right, I hope for a pleasant partnership.
William Street. A stout man from Faceac who was nearly 2 meters tall was searching for clues. Suddenly, he felt his spiritual perception trigger as he looked up. Light which resembled the morning sun's rays surfaced around his body, illuminating the surrounding houses and street lamps as though they were illusions. At the same time, sparks soared on the street as all kinds of supernatural phenomena appeared.
Indeed, the Sauron family has sent people over.
The man from Faceac, who had his suspicions, cast his gaze straight down the street. He saw Nighthawks wearing red or black gloves as black gun barrels, covered with complicated patterns extended out of the rooftops. They were aimed at him, while the surrounding passers-by didn't seem to notice anything amiss. He also saw the Church of Steam and Machinery's Archbishop of the Backland Diocese, Horomek, and the Church of the Evernight Goddesses, Archbishop of the Backland Diocese, St. Anthony. Immediately following that, he caught sight of members of the Sauron family raising their hands above their heads through the corner of his eye. The powerful Faceac spies also did the same thing. They had decisively chosen to surrender. Resistance only spelled certain death. There was still a chance of being repatriated by surrendering. At 6:30 that evening, Klein once again came to the Sweet Lemon Bar where he met Bilt and Sothoth. He expressionlessly said,
"An advance of £500. Then you will need to tell me who I'm supposed to change into."
Bilt couldn't hold back his smile as he gestured for Sothoth to collect the funds from the safe, while saying with a deep voice,
He's the kingdom's highest-ranking Navy commander of the Central Sonia Sea, His Excellency Admiral Emirius Revelt, a real demigod.